If you were trapped on an island and forced to play in brutal children's games where all the losers are executed, what would you do? I'm going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do and how to beat every death game in Squid Game. This guy is the unluckiest man in the world. Gwilla here has just gambled the last of his life savings on a horse track and manages to win 4,000,001, collecting the money from the tether. He runs out to spend his new hard-earned cash and steps outside to call his family with the good news. He's on top of the world. But that, approaching him and realizes his luck has just run out, panicking. He runs back inside to escape them but crashes into this woman and falls to the ground. Now realizing that this pickpocket stolen all of his winnings. The loan sharks finally corner him in the restroom to collect his debt. But when he checks his pocket, he finds it slashed open and his money has disappeared with nothing to his contract with his own blood promising to pay them back in 1 month. Depressed, the gambler sits on the subway bench to wait for the next train home. When this businessman comes over to talk to him, he wants to play a game and the gambler thinks he's just an annoying salesman, but then he opens his briefcase, reviewing stacks of cash in 2 folded paper squares. The salesman invites him to play the Korean, promising to give him 100,000 won every time he wins, but he'll have to pay the salesman if he loses. It's a ridiculous gamble. But with everything to gain, Gillo decides he's in the man place. He folded paper on the ground and the gambler tries to flip it over, but he only manages to make the red tile jump. He's failed. But when the salesman takes his turn, he flips it over on the first try. Man, he doesn't have the money to pay him. But the salesman offers to reduce his debt in return for 1 slap in the face. It's an offer he can't refuse and desperate to win. He takes the he keeps losing each round, getting smack after smack until finally he throws at his tile and flips the salesman's paper over. Gillo has just won 100 grand for playing a children's game, but it's not as innocent as it may seem. Okay. First of all, let me just say that this guy here needs to be careful because if any of these trains are going to Busan, then he's going to instantly regret it. Now, accepting this game was a terrible idea. This man can't stop himself from gambling with money. He doesn't even have and against someone who walks around with a DOI in his suitcase and is clearly better with a brain wouldn't take that bet. But once Gillo realizes that it's free money, it only requires a slap in the face to keep playing. He doesn't have to consider that this whole situation is suspicious as hell. At this guy's outfit here. This man is strictly on business, and since he approached him with such a specific agenda, it tells us he already knew that Guyan is a degenerate gambler and is targeting him for some reason. This salesman gave him every possible chance to make sure he's won some money from him, and nobody tries that hard to lose money unless what you're getting in return is much more valuable. Gillo was too greedy to read any of these warning signs, and the man let his emotions get the better of him. Now, none. This guy's suspicious behavior matters if you had a proven strategy to play and win. G is a game, popular that the game is even televised for mass entertainment, but it's not the strongest player who wins this game. It's the smartest and most coordinate. If you look at this player here, try. And that's because he used the most surface area to make more contact with the other paper. If you can strike the target with the flat side of your daisy paper, then the momentum will be transferred and on the bounce that it flips over. This might seem counterintuitive, but it's just plain physics. And you can see this player was not successful because he was trying to use the edge, which is not opening. Had known the best way to play this game, he could hustle his businessmen for all his cash and walk away without having to get slapped in the process. Now, even though he won this one victory, will soon leave the game to playing 6 of the most terrifying death games you could possibly imagine. And instead of a slap in the cheek, he'll soon be gambling with his life. But you don't have to. Your bank is giving you a hard time. You feel exploited, used, and your bank is partially to blame. You are tired of financial institutions hiding information from you. Who are you? What business of yours is all that I am current, the future of mobile banking. Wait, current even to sponsor this video that's giving away $5,000 to my viewers. Yes. And if your viewers download the app and use current code HowToBeat in the next couple of weeks, we will be sending 10 random people $500 each, guys. If you don't know, current is baking, you can do entirely on your phone with every feature you could possibly ask for early paychecks, spending insights, and instant notifications. There are no hidden fees, no hidden anything, so easy to use. And you also get a sleepy card like this one, the best you can manage on the app and get rewards like points or cash back where you shop current. Takes away the hassle and confusion out of managing your. You guys signed up last time. They're sponsoring us again and giving out $500 to 10 more people who sign up. Go to a link in the description k.com/cinema summary to download the app. And if you use the code, how to beat, you might just win $500. We don't have any spots left. Thank you for sponsoring this video. Gwilla here collects his winnings and the salesman tells him he can win more money playing other games, but he turns down the offer. That's when the salesman stands up and reveals he knows the exact amount of money Gillo owes to loan sharks and that he'll be killed if he doesn't pay it back. The gambler knows this, and the salesman hands him a business card telling him to call if he wants to join the competition of a lifetime. Gillo considers his offer, but this will be the biggest mistake of his life. Newfound luck. He returns back home to have dinner with his mother. But the woman knows the money came from gambling. She tells him that his ex-wife is planning to move to America and he'll only finances to prove he can care for her. Yiyun is devastated and realizing she's right. He decides to call the number on the business card telling the salesman that he accepts his offer to play another game. Waits outside to be picked up when a van pulls up to the sidewalk. Getting inside, he begins to notice that all the other passengers are asleep. But when the van starts to fill toxic gas, the gambler realizes up big time and gets knocked unconscious. When the man opens his eyes, he wakes up to find himself lying in a bunk bed surrounded by hundreds of others in cots just like him. They're all wearing uniforms with numbers on them. And as everyone gathers in the center of the room, the front door opens and a team of guards walk inside. This man with a square mask tells them they played in 6 different games, and through all 6 games will get a cash prize. This man demands to know why they were brought here and the guard presses a button playing a montage of several people being slapped. Everyone in this room is drowning in debt and they've all been invited here to win enough money to pay it off. The players all lined up just on consent forms with 3 clauses stating that they must keep on playing, that if they refuse to play, eliminated, and that the games can be ended if the majority of players agree to stop. Okay, there's nothing more dangerous than a room full of desperate people who have nothing to lose. And that's why the real threat are not just the games from the video that was played. We can see the Doc G salesman use the same trick on everybody, and they've only invited players who are willing to gamble money they don't have on a game they're unlikely to win. It's textbook psychological manipulation, and it proves this wasn't a game for cash. This was a test that everyone in the room passed, and now they know what we're willing to say yes to, which should scare the crap out of us. If we all agreed to play for more money, then we can be sure that the penalty for losing is going to be a lot worse than a few slaps. Now, if you pay close attention to the details of this, realize that Guyan here is about to have a really day, because this place looks like a death camp designed by IKEA and H&M. Even refugee camps don't stack their bunks 6 beds high, and everyone is given a uniform with a number instead of their name. So their identities haven't stripped from them, and it's an immediate red flag that this is going to become a death gate. If prison rule apply here, that there are 450 other people who might kill you to get ahead, and it won't matter what game we're playing. The best strategy right now is to lay low, stay quiet and observe our surroundings, to gain more information, to make sure we have a key thing to notice here is that these guards have different shapes on their masks, but this could indicate different work roles. The circles could be workers and the square mask could be a manager of some kind. Is extremely important because it helps you behave accordingly. At pissing off the wrong person just might get you killed. Now, signing this contract is the cherry on top of the death game here, because after being tried against, this whole enterprise is completely illegal, which means the contract can't be binded. This is designed to create the illusion of choice and keep you playing even when things are getting really fed up. The fact that here has realized this contract is meaningless tells us they are prepared for what's about to happen next. After being processed, they're all taken to their first game, entering an outdoor room with a massive. In front of them is a giant doll standing at the other end of the field. Here recognizes one of the players as his childhood friend. Sinuan walks up to say hello. Suddenly the gates behind them lock shut, and the competitors are told they'll be playing the children's game. Red light, green light. Players must run to the finish line while the doll looks away. But if it looks back and catches them moving, they will be eliminated. The finish line. And with that, the game begins. The players start running across the field, but the doll suddenly announces red light before anyone expects it. And this player is caught completely off guard, still trying to catch his balance, and a voice announces that he's eliminated. Suddenly a gunshot rings out and the player collapses to the ground motionless. He's just been shot dead and realizes they've been tricked into playing a death game. Everyone starts running for the exits, but the doll is detecting every movement and bullets start flying. By the time the shooting stops, over 100 people have been. Players are left frozen in fear. The doll turns its head back, announcing its green light, and the group starts moving again, determined to make it out of here alive, using the sky like a shield. Another player to hide herself from the doll's sight. It's the same girl who stole the gambler's money earlier when he was running from the loan sharks. And without hesitation, she pulls the man down to launch herself to move forward, but he's grabbed by the injured player who begs him for help. One wrong move and he's going to get him shot. But luckily the doll turns back around just in time and he breaks out of the man's grip. The minute left and the players are finally starting to reach the finish line. The man is only a few meters away from being game, but just as he takes a step forward, he trips over a dead body. He's about but another player saves his life, holding him up until the doll announces green light with only 3 seconds on the timer. Guyan jumps through the air and finally makes it across the finish line. Who haven't crossed are all brutally shot to death. And the survivors look up to notice a massive roof close overhead. They have no idea. They're on a private island in the middle of nowhere. To win. That's one game down with only 5 more to go. Okay. This is the most horrifying children's game I've ever seen. But 001 here is having the time of his life, something that everyone else is too scared to realize. This game isn't just about speed. It's about how much ground you can cover with enough stability to freeze at any given moment. With this in mind, method here is to walk with feet flat on the ground in a wide stance. So our center of gravity stays low and stable. This old man was born for this moment because he moved with a very stable of how everyone here walk. If they want to make it out alive, now, we can't afford to be frozen and shot like Jan here because there's a lot of ground for us to cover in a very short time. This room is you into thinking it's smaller than it is. But there's a trick we can use to gauge the distance so that we know how fast we need to walk to reach the finish line before the clock runs out. Taking advantage of PAL, you can actually use your thumb to figure out the length of the field. The space between your eyes is about 1/10 the length of your arm. So if you stuck your thumb out closing one eye after another, your thumb move 1/10 the distance as the guards are from where you're standing. You can actually try this right now by sticking your thumb out in front of you and closing one eye and then switching to the other eye to see your thumb move. If you do the math here, this trick tells us that we're at least 100 meters away. That means that this place is roughly the length of a soccer field. So if you want to make it across in 5 minutes, even 1 second. One of the biggest mistakes you can make here is looking at the doll instead of watching where you're placing your feet. Important to remember that we aren't responding to visual cues. Here, we're listening, red light, green light. We can't risk tripping or accidentally losing our footing. So watching our feet helps us shut out unnecessary information so we can concentrate on stability while keeping our The next thing I would do is try to protect myself, and there's nothing more safe in a death game than finding a good old-fashioned beach shield. If we position ourselves behind another person, then it makes it much harder. Any movement. If we happen to flinch at a gunshot or react to another player dying close by. So walking behind someone is the best insurance. We have to hide it. Now, the other players trapped in here with us. We have to realize that we are extremely vulnerable to anyone who wants to kamikaze their way out of here. If you get pushed over, then they're taking you out with them. Movement to get you killed. So we'll need to stay far enough away from people that they can't interfere with their progress. The best way to do this is to position yourself along this wall. Natural human, and that might be drawn to the shade here. So to avoid the other players, I would use the sunny side of the wall. Instead, this also gives us another point stability to help us stop in time and killed. After the game, the guards come in to congratulate the survivors on passing and announce that 255 players were killed. It's a horrifying number, and afraid for her life, steps forward begging the man to let her go home. Several other players joined her in protest. But that's when this massive piggy bank drops in above them and starts to fill with more cash than they've ever seen in their. The survivors are shocked, and the masked man tells everyone that they have an opportunity to win 45.6 billion won. But if anyone leaves, then they won't get a single penny with that. A voting machine is set up in front of them and they all cast their votes. But the majority of players agree to quit. The masked man tells them they can still come back if a majority agrees to compete again. Home. Now, it turns out that every single one of them realizes their lives outside are much worse than they remember. Anguilla here to keep playing, but they're all going to instantly regret it because this next, more screwed up than the last. The vans take them to the private island where a team of workers dress them into their uniforms. And the players finally wake up back in the same place as if they never left. Night. Gillo talks of his childhood friend and suggests the team up for the next game to increase their odds of winning. The man agrees it's wise to join forces in spotting the player who rescued him last game. Them too. That's when the old man asks if he can also be a part of their team and unhappily accepts him into the group, but his friend is not happy. He invited someone so old to join their team. They led into a new arena, and as they pour in they find an oversized playground in front of them. A voice instructs them to line up in front of one of the 4 shapes on the walls, and their choices are a circle, triangle, star, and umbrella. That's when Wu here has a flashback to his childhood and suddenly realizes what this game is, but the man doesn't tell anyone what he's just discovered. Here asks him if they should all choose the shape. But he rejects the idea, suggesting they should split up to reduce the risk. Finally, the doors open as the announcer instructs them to take a case to the tables. And the players find a shape in the middle. They'll have to use the needle to poke out the shape in 10 minutes. But if they crack it, they'll be executed. The game begins, and Guan here carefully starts breaking off pieces of the immediately cracks his honeycomb in half without hesitation. The guard pulls out his pistol and shoots the man dead, making him the first casual this game. It starts a chain reaction as more people executed without mercy. Guion is sweating for the pressure. The umbrella is the hardest shape to cut. But suddenly the man has a revelation. Seeing the beads of sweat falling onto the candy, he might be able to melt it with his saliva from the bottom because he outlined the shape as thinner than the rest of the honeycomb. He starts to lick the toffee while other players begin to follow his lead. And with 12, Guion desperately breaks apart his honeycomb perfectly, removing the umbrella from the mold at all odds. He's won again. That's 2 games with 4 more to go. Okay, the wrong shape in this game, you have an extremely low chance of surviving. For those of you who are unfamiliar, this candy is known as Taiwan and removing the shape without cracking. It is which is why the players recognized it as soon as they opened their tin cans. It's made out of melted sugar and baking soda, creating a unique structure inside which makes it hard to predict how it might crack in fraction mechanics. This is known as strain energy, and when it releases, other micro cracks start to spread, make it crumble more easily. That is exactly what makes this game so challenging, because it just might make your candy crack on you without warning and you'll be shot in the face. The more sharp angles there are in the shape, the more you are likely to break it. And that's why Jan here is completely screwed, because he chose an umbrella which has the most angles by far. This teammate here told everyone to split up to spread out the risk. But if you think about it, his suggestion is total bullshit. Spreading out for the group to work together because they won't be facing the same problems. For this reason, I would have suggested that we all select the same shape so that whatever solutions we can find, we can all bet. It's clear that this guy is intentionally trying to get the other players killed in order to increase the prize pool for himself. And that's cold-blooded as hell. Now, there's still a way to increase your knowing what the game is. Look at how these first 2 players rush in to select a shape before anyone else. Both of them chose triangle, and when nobody's supposed to know what the game is yet, it probably means they from their childhood. Now, this doesn't guarantee that triangle is the best choice, but given they are so sure of themselves that the stakes are life and death, it's not unreasonable to assume that someone this confident figured something out. If the players were unsure of their decision, they would take more time to think about it. And if you have no idea what the game is, following their lead is going to be your best option. Now, with the worst shape possible, there's still hope here, because the rules never stated that you could only use the needle, and that opens up a lot of possibilities to win. Using your saliva is a smart move because wet makes the candy softer and you'll be able to cut the shape out without cracking it. This might seem obvious, but under a craze about a stress like this, it's hard to see other solutions if you're already told how you're them. And most of the players here were so fixated on using the needle, they didn't have to think outside of the box. This is actually very similar to the candle problem, which was subjects were given a table, a box of thumb, some matches and a candle. They were then instructed to stick the candle to the wall without letting any wax strip onto the table, but they have to come up with a solution as he possibly can. What's interesting is that most of the participants didn't consider that the box itself could be used to solve the problem until their time ran out, and it had everything to do with time pressure and how were presented to them. We can learn from this by considering all the tools he had to work with. But none of these players realized they might be able to use the tin can here to solve their problem instead of looking to can to collect their liquids and soak the bottom of the candy way faster. All the players go back to the main room where the results of the second game are announced. 79 people were killed with 100, and that's now 34.8 billion won in the bank. Later, the players will gather for lunchtime. But when the last of them walk up to get food, they're shocked to find there's nothing left. Angry, yells at the guard for being unfair. But suddenly this girl stands up and points across the room telling everyone that these players here cut the line to take seconds. The man to the gangster and tries to pull the water out, but he's overpowered and the bottle shatters on the floor furious. This guy slaps into the ground and starts beating him to death as the guards do nothing to stop him. All of a sudden the scoreboard announced has died and the total cash price goes up by 100 million yen. A couple of guards walk in to take the body away while everyone stares in war, realizing that this game just got a lot more dangerous. Later, Sung-woo here tells his team to stay awake tonight in case they're attacked. The other groups are preparing for a fight. But here notices this girl across the room and recognizes her as the pickpocket who stole. The man approaches and invites her to join the team, but she rejects his offer, insisting no one here can be trusted that night. They all get into their beds and nervously wait for the guards to leave the room. Once the lights are turned off, several people slowly begin to leave their cots searching for an easy kill. Suddenly this player panics as a thug grabs her and stabs the woman to death. This one murder causes a chain reaction and all the other players begin killing each other for cash. Gillo and his team try to defend themselves. But that's only here the old man begging everyone to stop fighting. And when the lights, guards running into the room, putting a stop to the madness. Okay. This just might be scarier than the actual game so far. There are no rules or restrictions here, and when you're literally dead than alive, everyone in this room has a motive to kill you. Now, with that said, this is actually the best thing that could possibly happen. There are a total of 27 players who die. The chaos, and while those are better odds than any of the death games so far, this wipes out a lot of the competition that we would otherwise be facing in the next challenges. All we have to do is survive the night, and the other players can kill each other off for our direct benefit. The best strategy here is to run to the corner of the room and defend your position with a group of friends. This might seem counterintuitive when it's completely dark and you can't see who's coming for you. Being cornered in like this leaves you with only 90 degrees of vulnerability, and that's much better than being in the middle of the, or you would have a full 360 degrees to be attacked from. If you don't have a group, then we should be hiding under one of the bunk beds. As soon as the lights go out, the killers won't be able to look for anyone in hiding because it's too dark to see. So this just might be the only time I'll ever tell you that hiding under the bed is a good idea, and hey, I don't mind being called a coward if we end up outliving everyone else as a result. The next, all the players wake up, but Guan here notices how tired the old man is and finds out he stayed up all night watching over the team and someone attacked them. He's exhausted, but there's no more time to rest because the third game is about to begin. The players are led into a white room where they're told to divide themselves into groups of 10. SW here realizes that a team game could mean it's a physical challenge and thinks they should find to join them. The group splits up to search for more players. But with time running out, they only manage to bring in the outcasts, realizing that 3 skinny women and an old man could put them at a severe. Groups are taken into another room where they see 2 massive platforms and they're told that day's game is tug of war. They'll need to pull the rope until the other team pulls off the platform to their deaths. And they draw lots to decide who will go first when it's finally their turn. Yo and his team stand up to see who they'll be facing, but find that their opponents are all stronger than them. They're completely outmatched to beat them with brute force. But as they ride the elevator up to the platform, the old man tells them he knows exactly how to win. Guian takes a position at the front to act as a leader with the very back. The group stands on all sides with their feet pointed forward. And as soon as the game begins, they all lean back as far as they can, using their whole body to pull the rope. With this technique, within the first 10 seconds and tug the other team closer to the edge, but it doesn't last for long. Their opponents gain their second wind and the group loses their footing as they're dragged closer to the edge of the platform. Wu here has a brilliant idea. He yells at everyone to take 3 steps forward at his signal. And with no other plan they do. As he says, the group steps forward, tumbling to the ground. Now, with the advantage, Guian's team is finally able to pull the others off the platform. And as the blade cuts through the rope, the players collapse, just happy to be. They've won and there's only 3 more to go. Okay. For anyone who's picked last in gym class, this one has got to bring back some painful memories because it's immediately clear that the biggest and strongest players are going to dummy in this game. If you're weak or old like these guys, you're at serious risk of getting your whole team killed. Now, I'm not to say that they won just because they had plot armor. But I'd be looking for every possible way to cheat because of the players we have. It's going to be our best chance at surviving. Now, the truth is this isn't just a children's game tug of war to be in the Olympics from the years 1900 to 1920. And to this day, the International Olympics Committee still recognizes it as an official sport. If this seems like trivial information, It's not because unlike silly children's games, an official sport has tons of rules with governing bodies to make sure that the game is being played fairly. The reason this is important is because these rules are created to prevent teams from gaining an unfair competitive advantage. Now, if that doesn't put a smile on your face and you're not paying attention, because in a death game like this, unfair competitive advantages are everything we could possibly want to stay alive in a death game. Official sport rules are basically a gift-wrapped instruction manual for how to cheat and win, because the workers are not going to be holding a training camp on proper toggle techniques and there's no referee on this platform. If we know what the official rules are, then it's reasonable to assume that we can break them without getting punished for it. The first rule I would break is called locking. This is usually done by placing your elbow behind your thigh, and it locks up any back and forth movement in the rope. Normally a tug of war are the only point of contact with the rope, and it means that your arms are doing a lot of work, but locking helps you easily use your entire body's weight to pull with. And this rule break makes it much harder for the team to win. Another form of cheating is for the player in the back to use what's called an anchor grip, where they wrap the end of the rope around their torso. This allows the last player to concentrate on using his full body to pull without even needing to place his hands on the rope. There are tons of tug-of-war rules that we can break here that will give us an unfair advantage, and it's the best way for a team like this to win no matter what. Now, if we're about to lose, we're going to need a Hail Mary tactic. And the best thing we can do is to have the whole team shift one side while the player in the back ties the rope to this metal bar here. This doesn't violate any of the rules stated by the square mask. And if we keep pretending to pull while letting her arms recover, the other team will have no idea their muscles out. These anchors can also be used as footholds instead of relying on the friction of the floor to push off of the next morning. The players are brought to another room where they are given game. They will need to pair up with one other person, and they have 10 minutes to find a partner. The players immediately start looking for anyone that will help them win. But Guan here notices that they're all ignoring. He reaches out of hand offering to be his partner. And the two join up by the end. The only person who doesn't have a partner is this woman. And with an odd number of players, everyone else leaves dragged away by the guards inside the arena. The players are led through a room that looks like an old Korean neighborhood and are each given a pouch filled with 10 marbles. The old man tells his partner with him as a kid, but makes a promise to be gone best friends if he wants a chance to survive this game. Suddenly, an announcement tells the players they must use the marbles to play a game of their choice and take all 10 partner in order to win. Sang-woo here decides to play a game of odds or evens, and his partner has never played before. But after only a few rounds, Ali here manages to get the better of him. Marbles, the man is devastated and he begs his partner to help him survive, asking for one last chance to play against the other teams to take their marbles. Instead, his partner decides to trust. Sang-woo asks for the man's placing it under his jacket. He secretly switches it out with his own before stripping his shirt to create a sling, hanging his pouch around the man's neck. He tells him to go searching to play against, and the man leaves with his partner gone. He puts his last marble in the full pouch. He stole and hands it over to the guard, becoming the winner. It's a filthy trick to play. Meanwhile, Guian plays against the old man, cheating in each round until he's down to one less marble. Realizing he's about to lose, he decides to surrender to his best friend. And Gillo breaks down in all 10 marbles. He walks away the winner as the old man gets killed. And with 4 games down, there's only 2 more to go. Okay. This death game has a lot more possibility, because for the first time we get to choose how we want to play. Now, the danger here is that there's only 30 minutes on the clock, and if your partner refuses to continue, you'll run out of time before you've won all their marbles, which will get you killed. Playing a single all-or-nothing round will solve this problem. But it's a risky, because if you lose, there's no way to win your marbles back. Now, the guys here are playing the game odd or even, where your opponent guesses if the number of marbles in your hand is odd or even. And if they guess right, they get to take them winning. This game is based on pure chance, and for someone as smart as Sang-woo here, he should have realized that this game would give him no way to use strategy to gain an advantage. Instead of games of blind luck like this, we should be looking for something that your opponent thinks they can win, but that, you can win. And for that, there's nothing better than an ancient Chinese game called Nim. This game has been around for centuries. There's actually a proven strategy to guarantee a victory. If you're not familiar with the game, this is how to play. First, we could buy our 20 marbles together into a shared pile and take, removing either 1 or 2 marbles at a time. Whoever removes the last marble gets to keep all of them and wins the game. It's so simple that you'd think there couldn't possibly be a strategy here. Key to this game is to always go first and remove exactly 2 marbles, then whatever they remove, you remove the opposite. For example, if they remove 2 marbles, then you remove 1, and if they remove 1 marble, then you remove 2. If we keep this going, then you're guaranteed to remove the last marble and you'll never lose. Most people don't know this mathematic exists. And that's why it's the perfect game to choose in this situation, because victory depends on another player's Cooper operation. We can use NIM to trick anyone into agreeing to play. They lost until it's too late. Now, it might be that there's just not enough time to waste in playing a full game of NIM, because the longer it takes your opponent to make decisions, the more he puts you at risk of getting executed. If that's the case, then we should follow this guy's dirty tactics and steal our partner's marbles to do this. We should ask for their pouch in order to set up the game. Over. Just go straight to the guard and declare you've met the win conditions. The other player will probably attack you in protest. But violence is not allowed in this game, and your opponent will be at gunpoint. If you have his marbles, there's nothing to stop you from winning. And in a death game like this, we have to consider every tactic at our disposal. If you want to stay alive, the victors return to the main. That this woman is still alive. She explains that since she had no one to pair with the game, let her skip the challenge. And after everything they've been through, the others are furious. All the players wake up to a group of guards coming in with a coffin, and Gillo here realizes that one of their fellow players decided to. During the night, looking up, they watch the man's life turns into cold hard cash. And that's when the P announces that the 5th game is about to begin. The group is taken to a room with a row of mannequins wearing numbered vests, and they're told to each choose one for their next challenge. Rushing in, everyone gets their pick. But when Guillen finally steps up to choose, the only vests left for him are numbers 1 and 16. He considers taking number 1, even though that means he'll go first, to have the number instead, and he agrees to let him take it finally into the game room. And the announcer tells them they will be playing glass, stepping stones. They must remove their shoes and walk over tempered, make it across the bridge. But if they step on a panel made from regular glass, they'll fall to their death with 60 minutes on the clock. The first player takes off his shoes and approaches the bridge nervous to the first tile and makes it. But when he moves on to the second, the man falls straight through the glass, horrified. The other players have no choice but to continue. And more people start. 1. They plummet to the ground as they slowly reveal a path of stable panels for the others to follow, with the first 8 players dead. It's now the gangster's turn to lead the group, but he refuses to move on, telling him if they want to pass. Everyone behind him starts to panic. They still have 5 panels left and are quickly running out of time. Suddenly the gangster comes face to face with this woman. Jumping onto his platform, she locks her arms around him, threatening to pull him off the ledge if he doesn't continue. But before the gangster knows it, they break through the glass panel as they both fall to there with only a handful. In less than 3 minutes left. This man crouches down to inspect the panel in front of him. Sangu begs him to keep on moving, but he reveals that he was a glass maker for 30 years and can tell from the reflection. The man jumps forwards onto a stable panel, and they realize his theory is working. But that's when the game decides to make things more challenging and turns off the lights so they can't tell the difference. Sung here realizes they won't be able to see the reflections anymore. But the glass maker has one last trick of his sleeve. He asks for something to throw at the panels, explaining that tempered and regular glass sounds. Yun here passes over the marble he still has. And the glass maker tosses in front of them, but with less than 25 seconds remaining, Song Woo decides to take matters into his own hand, shattering the glass into pieces. And with the path clear, they all make it to the other side. When the timer hits 0, the remaining glass panels suddenly explode and the shards go flying through the That's now 5 games down and 1 more to go. Okay. This glass maker was a total badass. He could have saved all 16 players if he shared his knowledge in the beginning. His mouth shut would eliminate his competition. And it was a bolder move. The only mistake he made was now waiting longer, because once he revealed his strategy, the game removed his advantage and greedy man to kill him off. Now, having said that, this game is different from the previous challenges because it's not a test of skill or strength when you have no information to base decision on. Choosing the right path here makes a game of random chance. If you look here, you'll see that there are 18 pairs of panels. So this first player has a 1 in 262,000 chance of making it across this bridge. This is basically a death game lottery with odds that I wouldn't play under any circumstances unless I found a way to cheat by the law of averages. It's fair to assume that each player will probably step on 2 panels before dying with 1 correct guess and 1 wrong. That means on average 9 players will need to die in order to cross all 18. of them. If the majority of the players are going to die, then it might be the perfect time to convince them to vote on leaving the competition. This death game is like telling someone that if they don't win the lottery, they'll die, and when you put it like that, it's kind of ridiculous that the first players even attempted to play. Now, if we actually choose to play the odds, we're going to have to cheat if we want any chance of making it to I'm not an extra glass maker like this guy here, but all I need to know is that if you throw something through window, it's going to break. That's exactly why I would have collected these shoes here. Take my jacket off and tie a knot at the end of the sleeve, then place a bunch of shoes inside so that we can swing it in front of us to test if the glass will break or not. If it cracks, then I jump to the opposite panel and continue until I reach the end. If for some reason this method fails, we can also try walking on the metal bars here instead of the glass. Now, this might be considered try it, we'll never know if it's allowed or not. The only win condition for this challenge is to make it across the bridge. And we've already seen other games where the players are able to manipulate the rules. You remember in the last games, Wuhir tricked his teammate into giving him the marbles instead of playing for them. And when things get desperate, these are the kinds of tactics that we need to start using. If we don't test of what's allowed in each and every game, then we might be missing out on some of the best that will keep us alive for longer. And it's a terrible waste of an opportunity. Later, the players are rewarded for surviving to the final game and given the first real food they've had in days. Starving the men dig into their steaks, realizing this could be the last meal of their lives when they finish eating. The staff leave them with their steak knives, and by all appearances, this next game is going to be a vicious fight to the death. That night, Gillo here decides to approach the girl to talk. He asks, and the reveals, she wants to get her mother out of North Korea so their families can reunite. It's a touchy moment, but suddenly Gillo looks over and notices the other player slouching in his bed. He realizes he's got the perfect opportunity to kill him, pulling out his steak knife. He's about a step forward. When the girl stops him, insisting he shouldn't play this way, he hesitates. The knife away. That's when he hears the girl gasping and turns around, shocked to find her leaning over in the bed, and realizes she was injured by the flying in the last game. Worried, he runs over, screams at the staff to treat her wounds. To his surprise, the lights suddenly turn on as the workers enter the room carrying a coffin, but they aren't here to help. Gillo looks behind him and sees Songo standing dead, and his knife is soaked in her blood. Furious, Gillo goes to attack him, but a guard intervenes, shoving the player to the ground, and as he screams in fury, the coffin closes over the woman's body, leaving the final two players left with one last game. Okay. This was devastating, but we all should have seen it coming. Wuhir has managed to stay alive because he's the most cold-blooded player in the game. But that's why he was 100% correct to kill this woman. He realized that with 3 players left, there was a huge risk that if the others banded together, they would have a majority using the third clause of the contract. This will let them force a vote to quit the game, and he wouldn't be able to stop them. If they were me, I wouldn't let that happen under any circumstances, because we've come way too far to give up. Now, that's why he took matters into his own hands before it got that far. And it was a brilliant move to make. Now, to be fair, this girl was already bleeding out and was simply not strong enough. At the next game, her only options were to kill the men during the night or to force a vote and return back to the mainland. Both of these benefit nobody but herself, and Gillo here seems to keep forgetting that he's in a death games. Wu just did him a huge favor and wiped out 33% of the competition. So as heartless and cold-blooded as it was, the man did exactly what he had to do. The 2 men are taken to where their 20 coin will be flipped to decide who will be defending or attacking. Picking triangle. Here wins the toss and chooses to play offense before the players are finally told that for the last round, be playing squid game as the attacker, Guilla must enter the squid-shaped court and tap his foot inside a circle on the other end to win. The defender wins if he manages to toss the attacker out of the court. Kind of violence is allowed, and the last person standing will be the winner. Suddenly the sky goes dark and it starts to rain as the 2 players take their positions, determined to get vengeance for the girl. Gillet here walks towards his childhood friend and starts swinging his knife. But the other player manages to get him at A. The 2 men go at it. And as the players get locked into a wrestling match, his opponent picks up Guo deep into the thigh. He kicks the other player away from him. But with his injuries, he can barely defend himself. The man walks up to him and tries to end his life, but Gillo won't give up, catching the knife second and bites his ankle, forcing the man to back off exhausted. He climbs over his friend and beats him into the ground. Song is to continue. And even though he has the perfect opportunity to kill him, Gillo spares his life, getting onto his feet. He asks the guard about clause number 3 and if they are still allowed to end the game. If both players agree to quit, he then offers a hand to his friend, telling him they can both go home. But the man decides to sacrifice himself, letting Gillo win by default. He's completed all 6 games and earned 45 billion yuan but is just lost in the process. Okay. Song W took the honor of a way out. But to be fair, this guy had it coming to him because he was just about the worst childhood friend you could ever ask for. He tricked Guo into picking an umbrella in the second game knowing that it might get him killed. And he also stole his other teammates' marbles, which was downright disrespectful. And having said that, we can't Yun here because this kind of behavior will backfire on you quickly. He's furious. That's Song who killed the girl, but it's distracting him from his priorities of staying alive and fighting strategies to win. If the man had kept his cool, he would have noticed that all the walls of the room were images that told him exactly what the next game would be. These pictures have been here the whole time. And if Gillo had noted game court with only 2 players inside, with that kind of evidence, all you need to know is how to play Squid Game to figure out what tactics will give us our best chance to win. So let's break down how this game actually works. There are 2 sides, an offense and a defense. The attacking players begin the game by trying to run across the while the defender tries to stop them if they succeed. The game enters stage 2, and must run through this narrow gap and break the defense, but only wins by tapping his foot of his tiny space. Lastly, if he gets pushed out of bounds by the defender, that he loses. Now that you rules, imagine if you're the attacker trying to run through this gap, except this time, the defending player here is holding out a steak knife. This is why choosing to play offense is a terrible strategy. They're actually not playing Squid Game at all. They're playing a new game called Your Childhood Friend. The fact that they are both given steak knives completely changes how we should be thinking about this. To put it another way, sumo wrestlers were allowed to use steak knives in competition. They would have to completely change their regular strategies and how to play and win. In this scenario, Gillo has to make it through this tiny dot, but all Song has to do is push him out of the court or kill him. Choosing the defender is going to give you a better chance to win because the knife makes it almost impossible to enter the gap without getting seriously injured. If I were him, I would even try standing where the opponent is supposed to tap his foot. This lures the attacker closer to the edges of the court here, and we might be able to throw him out of bounds to win the game. Require nearly as much energy, agility or endurance as the offensive player needs to have. And that's why Ji-hun made the worst possible choice. Now, this is not the only mistake that was being played. He was so caught up in gaining revenge that he completely forgot the main objective. This man had several opportunities to run through the gap and tap his foot on the sword to win. But he ignored it and continued fighting. It's the same problem he had at the beginning with the Doc G player, because when he finally won it for the paper, he was so caught up with his emotions that he wanted to return the slap and that he was playing for 100,000 won. It's Guo's worst character flaw, and it nearly cost him his life. He's taken back to the mainland in Dublin a sidewalk with a special debit card as a reward. It into an ATM, he discovers it's full the prize money for the death game. 1 year later, Guan here is miserable and hasn't any of the money he won. But as he's sitting on a river bank, a woman asks her flowers before they wilt. He pays for a single rose and she gives it to him. But then he discovers an envelope was attached to it with a pink ribbon. Opening it, he finds out it's a squid, inviting him to a reunion in the city. Going to the address, he enters his building and is shocked to find the old man lying in a gurney. He's somehow still alive. And Gillo demands an explanation about who he is. The old man tells him he created the death games. The only reason he joined was so that he could feel like a kid again. Kun is completely disgusted, but the old man dies before he can answer any more of his questions. Several days. In one crazy haircut later, he's traveling to the airport to visit his daughter when he spots someone slapping a guy on the platform, and he realized it's the DG player who gave him the business card. Furious, he runs over to the other side of the tracks to confront the man, but he's already got on the train and left here. Walks up to the person he was playing with and sees he was given a card. Taking it out of his hands, he discovers it's an invitation to the death game. Later, he's about to board his plane and decides to call the number on the card. He demands to know other and tells him to get on board. That makes Gillo furious, and he turns back around to decide to stop the Squid Game before more people get hurt. But what do you think? How would you beat the Squid Game? With a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe, and check out the How to Be playlist for more videos like this in the next time.